Hi, welcome to another IELTS video. In this lesson, we are going to go over what to do when faced with two or more data sources in Academic Task 1. If you find this video helpful, visit my blog at IELTSIELTS.com and join us at the forum IELTSnetwork.com. To illustrate what to do, in the event you are given more than one data source in your Academic Task 1 question, we are going to use this sample task. The task description reads, write a report summarizing the information below. Write at least 150 words. So here we have three data sources, two pie charts, and a table. And the challenge with multiple data sources is figuring out the relationship between them and expressing this relationship logically in written English. So the first step we should take after reading the Task 1 description is to digest exactly what each data source individually reveals and whether or not a trend is present within the data source itself or through a coupling of data sources. Pie charts are often, but not always, given in pairs, as is the case we see here, and typically will present a trend between them. So the title given for these pie charts is Deaths from Infectious Diseases in Canada. And we see details of the death rates resulting from 6 infectious disease categories in Canada in 1900, and a snapshot for the same 6 infectious disease death rates in 1930. So because we are being shown the same data at two different points in time, we can establish some kind of trend. So in this case, it looks like cases of certain infectious diseases in the list diminishes, while the number of deaths due to measles remains stable, and infectious disease deaths under the category of other, non-pandemic, appears to grow. So the trends that exist here are fairly straightforward. However, if we look at our third data source, we are thrown a bit of a curveball. This data source shows overall death rates due to infectious diseases at the same 2 points in time seen in the pie charts, 1900 and 1930. And once again, we can mentally flesh out the trend that is being presented to us, namely that overall death rates due to infectious diseases dropped significantly during the 30 years in question. So now we need to piece together exactly what is going on and how we are going to convert what we see here into logically written English. It appears that the trend present between the pie charts shows a decreased share of overall infectious disease deaths among several of the diseases, except for, I guess, other non-pandemic measles and whooping cough. And this information is obviously skewed by the fact that overall deaths due to infectious diseases drops significantly. So the trend illustrated between these three pieces of data is that infectious disease deaths in Canada as a whole diminished quickly between 1900 and 1930. And this diminishing caused a rebalance among which diseases were the most prevalent killers at this time. So it's important to point out that the rebalancing is somewhat distorted because it is not reflecting a growth in the prevalence of any of these diseases, but rather illustrates new shares of a diminishing whole. Okay, so now that we understand what is going on here, in each individual data source and in the relationship between the three data sources, we're ready to put pen to paper and start our response. So to respond to this, we'd create an overview paragraph, so some sort of introduction, outlining what the data is, and then we'd start our first analyzing paragraph, which would focus on the two pie charts and the trend that exists between them. In a second analyzing paragraph, we would illustrate how the information presented in the table sort of reframes the trends that are present between the two pie charts. So this is where we're going to have to be careful with our wording structures to ensure that we're presenting a grammatically sound and accurate representation of the data. Okay, so I have pulled together a model response. Two pie charts display the fatality rates of 6 infectious disease categories as percentages of overall infectious disease deaths in Canada in the years 1900 and 1930. The corresponding table outlines the number of deaths due to infectious diseases per 1,000 people in Canada for the same years. Deaths caused by 3 of the 6 infectious disease categories shrunk as percentages of overall infectious disease deaths between the years 1900 and 1930. Diphtheria dropped from 37% to 24%. Typhoid and scarlet fever dropped from 29% to 18% and 9% to 5% respectively. Measles was the only disease that held a consistent proportion of overall infectious disease deaths at 12%. Whooping cough grew from 11% to 15%, and other non-pandemic diseases swelled from 2% to 26%. However, the table adds significant context to the above values. It appears as though the overall death rates due to infectious diseases fell tremendously over the period in question. In 1900, 86 out of 1,000 people died of infectious diseases in Canada. In 1930, however, this figure was only 32. Thus, because overall death rates from infectious diseases shrunk so dramatically over the 30 years in question, any trends observed between the two pie charts can be assumed less intense than they appear. Okay, I hope you found that model response helpful and that you're walking away with a few new ways to word your academic task 1. Thank you very much for listening and have a nice day.